Okay, this year's Mops theme is Be You Bravely. And to me, this is about embracing who you are and your uniqueness and being content with who God made you to be, not comparing yourself to anyone, not comparing your situation to anyone else's, and not comparing your children to anyone else's children. That's a tough one. Comparison is an easy trap to fall into, and comparison to anything or anyone other than God will tear us down and it will wear us down. We honestly need to be intentional to work on not comparing. In Galatians 6:4, it says, "Let everyone be sure to do his very best, for then he will have the personal satisfaction of a job well done and won't need to compare himself to anyone else." And then I like this quote my mom used to say a lot. God didn't make superior people or inferior people, but rather he made people with differences. So each of us is a person perfectly created by him with a unique difference or differences. So celebrate you and be thankful for the person God made you to be. So what happens in your mind when I say the word Pinterest? Did you want to grab your phone and quick look at the latest pinnings? Or did you just roll your eye? Did you just roll your eyes and go, no, there's no way I'm ever keeping up with those people? It seems like we all love the idea of Pinterest, but then we put the pressure on ourselves to keep up with all the endless, fabulous ideas posted there or on Facebook or any other social media. We are the ones that make it feel overwhelming, and sometimes we start comparing ourselves to these people, and some of these people we don't even know, and we're allowing ourselves to feel inferior. But God didn't make any of us inferior, and he didn't make any of us with mistakes. God didn't make any mistakes. Falling into comparison was a pretty big issue for me when I was a young mom. It was an issue when I was growing up too, but I won't go down that rabbit trail. I don't have enough time. Honestly, if I don't put a lid on those feelings and emotions when they creep up on me even now, it will still be an issue, and I know I'm not alone on this. Everywhere we look, everywhere we go, there is something that makes us feel the need to compare, to measure up to something that we think is important. It was TV, radio, magazine for me years ago, and now it's still those, plus social media. It's in our faces. So we have to determine to not put that pressure of comparison on ourselves. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do Pinterest or we shouldn't try and better ourselves in certain aspects. I'm only cautioning that how we need to be careful to not get pulled into the trap of comparison. I'm talking about celebrating you and who God made you to be. How do we keep our focus on that? Go to the Bible and find those verses that tell you the promises and just get those in your head. In Romans 12:6, it tells us that in God's grace, he has given us different gifts for doing for doing certain things well. So whatever your gifts are, we're to do them well. If we work towards accepting how much God loves us and embrace the journey, and it is a journey, of becoming who he made us to be, instead of trying to be who we think we should be, there is where we're going to find God's peace and joy. And we'll also find security and confidence in knowing that you are God's personal creation, made for a purpose that only you can fulfill. In Psalm 138:8, David said, "The Lord will perfect that which concerns me." And in 1 Corinthians 12:18 through 20, Paul says, "But in fact, God has placed the parts in the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body." So again, we each have a specific God-given purpose. And then I read an article in the Proverbs 31 Ministries where the author said that comparison pushes us to compete with each other. But God intends for us to complete each other. And we're supposed to encourage each other's strengths while discovering and embracing who he created us to be. And to me, I also think comparison pushes us to think poorly of ourselves and not accepting God's full-on, complete, total love for us exactly as he made us. And as we think about all of this in light of us and how we can avoid the pitfalls of comparing ourselves to others, I also encourage you to not compare your own children with their siblings or with other people's children. We should work to discover your children's uniquenesses and help them discover their gifts too. Do it together as a family project. Start early, making sure they know they're loved by God and by you, and that there is no one else in the whole world who is exactly like them, even if they're a twin. I'm barely scratching the surface of this topic. There are so many places I could trail off to, but it's a start, and I hope I've given you something to chew on and pray about and something to be brave about in dealing with it. In 2 Thessalonians 2:16 through 17, it says, "May our Lord Jesus Christ himself and God our Father, who loves us, and by his grace gave us his eternal encouragement and good hope, encourage your hearts and strengthen you in every good word and deed. And I'm going to end with reading the words to a song by Francesca Battistelli. It's not exactly on topic, but her focus is on how much God loves us. And honestly, if we're struggling with comparison, that's where we should start. Spent today in conversation in the mirror face to face with somebody less than perfect. I wouldn't choose me first if I was looking for a champion. In fact, I'd understand if you pick everyone else before me. But that's not my story. True to who you are, you saw my heart and made something out of nothing, so I don't need my name in lights. I'm famous in my Father's eyes. Make no mistake, he knows my name. I'm not living for applause, I'm already so adored. It's all his stage, he knows my name. True to who you are, you saw my heart and made something out of nothing. He calls me chosen, free, forgiven, wanted, child of the King, his forever, held and treasured. I am loved. I don't need my name in lights. I'm famous in my Father's eyes.
Amber is a wife and mom celebrating 23 years of marriage with 3 kids. She's a former kindergarten teacher, preschool director, curriculum and literacy specialist, and a children's ministry leader. Whew, I'm tired just saying that. She is a trainer. She's been training teachers, Sunday school volunteers, and women for over 20 years and acts as a consultant to schools and churches throughout California. She has her bachelor's in human development from Hope International University. She's a writer of one children's book, various parenting magazines, a mommy blog, online Bible studies, part of the writing and editing team at her church, and she's a speaker who travels to churches, schools, and MOPS groups across the U.S. and Europe. Let's welcome Amber Lappin.
Ooh, oh, there we go. I have never been accused of being too quiet, so this is very exciting. Okay, so we talked about the fact that, oh yes, I decided that I would enjoy being a mom. If I was going to be a mom, I was going to enjoy it. And that is something that I didn't realize before I started working with children that you had to actually decide to do. It was a surprise. I thought, oh, you just naturally, you like kids, you're going to like all kids, and you're going to like being a mom every day. Raise your hand if you love being a mom every single day, all day, every minute of the day. I have a friend one time that came to me and she said, well, I made a decision. I'm done having kids. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why your husband had the vasectomy. And she's like, no, 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 no. Maybe I didn't say it right. It was fun, but now I'm done. It was great while it lasted, but I don't need to be a mom anymore for the rest of the day. Can you please take my kids for just a few hours? I'm like, yes, I understand being done having kids sometimes. That actually does happen. And I think when we're talking about having the courage to be intentional, to the bravery that it takes to intend to care for your children in an intentional way, there's a couple of different ways to look at that. And when I was spending time thinking about being an intentional mom, I was thinking really about the generation who raised us. And I thought, you know, it's so funny to me how different our parents raised us from the way we raise our children. Raise your hand if you raise your children exactly the way that your mom did it. Nobody? Oh, no. Some people are like, no, I wish I could be that awesome. And some people are like, oh, no. No matter how it how it differs. There's always a difference. We always look at things when we are kids and we think, oh, that wasn't such a big deal. When I'm a mom, I'm not going to worry about that. And there might be some things that you said before you were a mom. When I'm a mom, that's never going to happen, which, by the way, is a rookie mistake, right? I'm never going to have one of those kids with the snot right here all the time, right? Never. Yeah. And I look at the way that my mom's generation parented. Now, my mom was a hippie, and so her entire generation parented a little bit differently than I will in general. But I think that it's funny, like with the nursing story, I remember my mom saying to me, why don't you just pick her up and nurse her when we're driving and crying? And I'm like, we can't, it's against the law. And they're like, yeah, we used to throw you in a basket in the floor of the floorboards in the back, and you were fine. And of course, I would always say yes, but we also don't smoke and drink when we're pregnant anymore. So we've learned a few things, right? We don't? No. We've learned a few things over the years. But I do think that our generation now, although there may be some things that we needed to care more about, that we needed to be more aware of. I remember watching soap operas as a child, a young child. Like, I would not let my children watch that. No. But in other ways, I think maybe I may have overcorrected. When my husband tells stories of his childhood, they are great. He was raised in Homeland in the sticks of the sticks. And he and his cousin would just get out and just run all over town. There were hills, and they would climb hills with their BB guns and a pocket full of matches and go off to find adventure. And some of the stories are alarming that I hear, like, oh, yeah, well, it took like 5 times to melt the army guys. And I'm thinking, you were playing with those matches. They just weren't props. Or, falling down the mountain and getting a chin full of gravel and those sorts of things. And I think, whew, we avoided those things. But then I think about the things that my children have missed out on. My children never really played out in the neighborhood where they would just go out the front yard and just play until the day was done. When we were kids, I was raised in Los Angeles area, so we had a big, healthy public park system. So every summer, you'd wake up at the crack of dawn, and you would grab your brothers and sisters, and you would walk down to the local park, and you would just stay there all day. You might come home to get something to eat, then you'd go on back, and you would know it was time to go home because the street lights would go off, or go on, and everybody in the whole park would just start headed home. And there would be moms on the porches going, you better hurry up, your mom's waiting for you, because there's no way for her to call you or for you to text to say you're on the way. They had to, kind of, have you seen her? Have you seen them? Send them home. It's time to go home. So we would all go home. And I think, wow, on first glance you think, gosh, my parents, not my mom is an individual, but my parents' generation, they sure didn't have to put a lot of thought into parenting. It must have been so nice not to worry if anything was gluten-free, GMO-free, was it PABA-free, did you have on sunblock before you left, are you allergic to anything, are your friends coming over, are they going to be offended by what I have hanging on the walls or what are we watching on TV? We could listen to any music in the car, the stuff we used to memorize the lyrics to. Have you ever been singing a song that you remember from your childhood and realize you're not going to be singing that in front of your children? I remember sitting down with the movie Grease with my kids, and about 10 minutes into it, I'm all, whoa, what happened to this great show? Right? Another one of those was Goonies. I'm like, oh, you guys, Goonies, you're going to love that movie. There are some scenes involving glue and a statue. You with me? Yeah, it wasn't great with my kids. So I can easily look and say, wow, they just didn't have as much to worry about. It must have been so easy. I don't know that that's entirely true. I think that part of the lesson that we can get is there are some things that can have some lasting effects. Maybe you have some memories of things that happened when you were not being supervised or what you watched and that you would like to change. And maybe there are some of those things. But there are also some of those things when you're like, those were the good old times. Those were the good old days when I used to be able to, jump out of a tree. How many of you have ever climbed a tree and got stuck? I don't think my children that would ever have happened to. Like, they'd get down out of the tree, you could die. And so I think that there is a possibility of an overcorrection, that we are so concerned about being intentional about our children that they are not exposed to risk or to chance or to adventure. And so as we talk about intentionality, I want to, first of all, just relieve you of the burden of feeling convicted that you need, that you've done it all wrong all along, and that you need to be more on top of your children. And if your child has ever gotten an injury, then you're a terrible mother. Children get hurt. Things happen. There are times that you're going to be feeling like, wow, I could have done that better. I could have thought better about that. I could have put more effort into it. But as we go through, I want to relieve you of the burden of thinking that you've done it all wrong and that everybody else is doing it right all of the time. One of the things about Pinterest that it can do to us is it can totally mess up our brains to think that everybody's house looks like that, and everybody's birthday party has 17 pennants, and they have, Elsa goes to everybody else's birthday party, and they all have frozen ice skating rinks on the backyard as they all go through to their, sparkly colored licorice sticks. It's very easy, and play pin the tail on Olaf, and there's this image that we can get that everybody is so intentional all the time and you just blow it all the time and you're just a loser. And that sounds harsh when I say it out loud, but I know that a lot of us think it in our hearts. I know that because I've experienced that many times. I do that even with being a Christian parent, and somebody will be like, oh yeah, my son is going to be a missionary and he has memorized the entire Bible and he has, been knighted by Billy Graham and it's all because, when he accepted his award, he said, it's all because of the devotions that my mom did with me every night, rain or shine. And I think, I failed. My son just wants to be a paramedic. He only just wants to save lives. It's not very spiritual. I don't know. He got an award one time for turning in all of his homework. Does that count? And it's easy to go, oh, I'm blowing it. I'm not intentional enough. I haven't put enough thought into this. I haven't worked hard enough. And when people quote the scripture, train up a child the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And as soon as your child seems like they're departing from it, you think, I blew it. Obviously, I didn't train them up in the way they should go. I think it's important that we realize that verse is not intended to carry a burden for us. It's not an idea that if you do everything perfectly, your child will turn out perfect. Please understand that no matter how intentional any of us is, our children are not going to be perfect. They are not going to make all choices that we love. And the older our children get, the more that becomes glaringly obvious. If anybody has a child over the age of 18, you know what I mean. All the time you have to be like, so that's how big you want your tattoo, huh? Well, you're an adult. It's your own money. Please don't put it on your neck. Decisions, your children are going to make decisions no matter how well you raise them. They're going to make mistakes. There is not one perfect person on earth so far outside of Jesus Christ. So if nobody else has ever been able to do it, let's just let that burden come right off us and realize that not only are we going to make mistakes, but even in areas where we did it perfectly, our children are still going to make mistakes and be imperfect. That's how that works. I remember watching, we used to play telephone with all day long. Remember with the toddlers, maybe your guys are still playing this game. Hello, it's for you. Hello, it's for you. It's for you. It's for you. And you practice, hello, hello. And then my son, when he turned 15, he forgot how to answer the phone. I'd call and he'd be sitting there. Hello. And he would not answer back. And be like, you called me, buddy. What do you need? And I think all of that time I invested in teaching him telephone manners. And he lost his mind. And my girls don't even talk on the phone anymore. They only text. So I don't know why we played that game at all. We should have played hello, LOL. It would have been much more useful. So it's easier when we realize the reality is our children are not going to be perfect, and that's not even the expectation for your job. It's easier to let that be put aside. But on the other hand, it's important to also realize that intentionality actually is a great thing. I don't know if you have ever had this. I'm sure this hasn't happened to anybody but me. But every once in a while, I forget that you have to think about the things that you eat. And I just get on a roll, like around Christmas and New Year's, and I'd be walking by Christmas cookies, and I would think not one thing about eating it for breakfast. Like, it wouldn't even occur to me that this was a seriously bad idea. And then have another one for a snack, and then another one. Well, might as well just finish them because they're just going to be talking to me. And that will usually happen with Girl Scout cookies if I don't talk to myself about this beforehand, because they come in the Thin Mints come in the sleeves, right? And so you're like, I'm just going to keep coming back to the freezer and taking one more. And so I might as well just eat them all now and finish it. But if I can make myself a determination ahead of time, I have a much better chance of eating well. And I do that with things I've shared with you before, I'm sure, about the fact that the thing that changed our eating habits the most was having a menu that we would stick to every single week. And it seemed like the silliest thing because my mom would never have even thought of doing that. But I'm telling you, it changed the way we eat. If you know what you're eating, then you don't think at the time when you're hungry of what you want to eat. Because thinking of what you want to eat when you're hungry is a very bad idea, because all of a sudden cookies seem like a perfectly reasonable choice. But when you're planning ahead, you can't write down, cold cereal, milk, and an old banana. You can't write that down. So when you're writing ahead of time, you have that intentionality. And I just use that as an example to talk about having some intentionality about our parenting. Some of the things that we don't realize, I think, is how much our children read into what we say and what we do. I remember talking to a mom one time that was just living a life that she was not proud of in front of her children. And I said, well, tell me this. Would you tell Lily this is how she should live? And she said, no, I would never. I want her to make all the right choices. I want her to do all the right things. And I certainly wouldn't want her to be in a situation that I'm in right now. I'm like, well, every day that you wake up and you live this life, you're giving advice to this child that this is what you're supposed to do. This is how men are allowed to treat women. Every day that you let her watch this, this is what she thinks is acceptable. And so you do have to think about what message your life gives to your children. And if you think they're not watching, then you just need to watch them for a little while pretend. If they pretend mommy or pretend driving. Sometimes... or when somebody cuts you off and they help you with what you should be saying. My son used to quote us all the time, oh my garnet, oh my garnet. We'd be like, what are you talking about? That guy doesn't know how to drive. They're watching us. And not only are they copying us, but they're getting a message from the things that we do. I've teased my mom for years about it, and she feels terrible about it. But one thing that she used to do whenever I would sing in the car, she would turn on the radio. Now, in retrospect, it probably was warranted. However, the message that I got when I was young was I should not sing out loud. Should never sing out loud. And see, we all say, oh, that's because you haven't heard me sing. It's all right. But I do think that a lot of times that we can give much more damaging, inaccurate pictures to our children if we're not careful with the things that we present to them. One thing specifically about dieting and eating and watching our weight, a lot of times we can give children the impression that being skinny is a huge value, and that, oh, I can't have that because I'm dieting, I'm on a diet, mommy's on a diet, I need to get skinny. And I think that sends a scary message to our children. We need to be careful about the things that we say to them, because we want to realize that this is advice that we're giving to them, their future selves. And so, for example, now, while I'm trying to shed the 4 million pounds I put on over the last year, I do not want to say to the girls, I can't eat that because I feel fat. I want to say things to them more like what I want to be true, which is, I notice that I don't feel healthy, and so I'm making healthier choices. Thanks anyway. I'm just going to have a bite of that because I need to make some healthier choices because I just don't feel healthy. I think that that's a much better message to give to my children than, I got to hurry up and get skinny or daddy's going to leave me, which is not actually what I think, for the record. we also we also need to be careful about the things that we say that we may seem like they're harmless, like "You're so pretty." Oh, the other girl, when they tell you that somebody's making fun of them, and we say things like "You're so jealous," or "Boys are so dumb." Those sorts of things that we may say to our daughters give a bigger message than we may realize. Um, when we say that children are being mean to you because they're jealous of you, we're also giving the message that that's okay to do. If you're jealous of somebody, you should be mean. It may also be this idea that the world revolves around you. And those are kinds of messages we don't want to give. We want to give messages to our children that are healthy, that we could play out and make sure that they are good advice and solid, genuine advice. Saying things like, how do I look? Oh, you're smart, you don't have to be pretty. Those are the types of things you want to be careful, because they read into those things. And I've heard parents say, oh, this is my pretty one and this is my smart one. And we don't think that we say things like that, but sometimes we may. Oh, here's this thing that I saw. I thought you would like it because I know that you are so smart, or you like to read, and here I'm going to give you this because I know you like to build. Are great things to do. I know this thing about you that you like. That's fantastic. But I know I got you this because you're so pretty. May have a mixed message for our children. So we have to be careful about the things that we say to our kids. We want to think big picture. We want to think about the advice. And we want to make sure that our words and our actions give a good message. Another thing that I've noticed amongst children of this generation a lot of times is that parents have this idea that their job is to make sure that their child never suffers in any way, shape, or form. That's too much pain. They have to wait too long. They're bored. When I was working in children's ministry, I've had parents tell me that all the time. I don't think we're going to come back because she's bored. I'm like, when you were a kid, did anybody else get terrified because you were never allowed to say you were bored? My children would probably raise their hand. We were never allowed to say you were bored, because if you were bored, I will find you something to do, right? And was it ever anything fun ever? No. My grandma always used to tell me, boring people are bored. Fix it. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And I'd never say bored. But I would have parents come to me all the time, they're bored. And the misconception, I think, that comes into our mind is that it was our job to entertain our children all day and all night. And I fell into that trap when my firstborn was born. I would be exhausted by the end of the day because I was just following him around like this. What else do you want to do? What else do you want to do, Your Majesty? And when I found out I was expecting twins when he was 4, I was like, uh-oh, this is going to be a problem. Because I could just imagine myself trying to nurse two babies and chasing after this 4-year-old all day. This is not going to work. And so we actually had to do solitary play training, where I would set the timer. He'd go in his room. We'd pick out a toy, set a timer. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And he would cry for the entire 5 minutes because he could not do it. I'm like, I failed. But we kept at it. And pretty soon he could play for a half an hour, and I figured that is plenty of time for him. And he would be able to find something on his own. After a while, I would help him pick, and then after a while, he would find something on his own that he would like to do during that half hour. And that time became valuable to me as well. Even after the girls were born and they were older, I would actually do that sort of thing with them as well, because I found that we were all healthier when we were not all up in each other's grill all day long. Like, people need room to breathe. A lot of times I see parents, they want so badly to make every moment a Pinterest moment that they interrupt their children where they're playing. Oh, and what letter does that start with? And they're like, I don't know, we were playing house. Back up. It's okay to let your children play by themselves for a while. Any kind of imaginative play, giving them a chance to set them up with a puzzle and give them a moment. Teaching our children to wait. When they're very small, of course, you feed your children so that you can have a solid meal. But as they get older, stop doing the thing where they get a special meal rolled out, cut up in shapes of Hello Kitty and, announcement of their royal throne ready for them to eat, and then you feed them every single bite, and then you get to eat cold slop afterwards. It's okay for them to learn to wait until everybody has food. It's okay for them to wait to start eating until everybody's been served. It's okay for them to wait for everybody to be finished before they're excused from the table. Obviously, you're not going to do that with a 1 and a 2-year-old, but you can start building on this as they get older and as they get older. Start building on that with the intentionality of my end game is eventually I'd like to sit down and have a meal with my children. And I think that that's the key of intentional parenting is to picture how does this play out. A lot of times parents don't think of this, and they play games with their children like there's something I see a lot, and I'm sure none of you do this, so I'm so sorry if I offend you, but the game where your kid runs up and butts their head into your leg and your stomach and everybody and falls down. I see parents play this all the time. But I think the parents aren't playing this out because as they get bigger, that starts hurting really bad. And when they do that to other people, they don't like it. Appropriate words. So when we're thinking these things out, we're thinking like, how does this play out? If I raise a child who believes that they have to be served first and waited on all day, what kind of grown-up does that turn into? Right? Do we enjoy those people? If I believe that my child has to be first all day long, and I raise a child who believes they need to be first all day long, are we going to enjoy that person? We have to kind of think the end game. So one of the things that was important to me, and maybe it's important to you too, is I want to sit at a table with people that I enjoy and have a conversation about the day. That's what my end goal is. I like that. It's important to me. We do it as often as we possibly can, especially when my son's home. We're like, come on, sit down, let's talk. Everybody sits down. They know how to pass food and ask for more, and they can chew with their mouths, closed, and they can talk with their mouths empty, and they have this, and they really should. They're 15 and 19, but that doesn't happen by accident. I have to be thinking, back that step up, what do I want it to look like? And so when they're very small, maybe that just means I'm pulling up a high chair to our regular table, and we're talking a little bit while I'm feeding, and as they get older, I'm maybe doing a little bit more of that and a little bit more of that so that when they are age appropriate to sit at a table and have a conversation and wait to eat, which is probably going to be a little bit after preschool age, they can do it. But we have to think of that big picture in mind, and I think that that's the thing that is the key to it. Same thing with money. I want my children to be responsible with money. I want them to grow up, and I have this dream for my son that he will save up all of this extra overtime and he will buy a condo or house with the money that he's saving up. I have this dream. I think it would be so rad not to have to have an apartment and rack up a bunch of debt in his life. I think that would be wonderful for him to be able to start out like that. But you can't just say, hi, I'm glad you have a paycheck now. This is how you need to spend money. We need to be talking about money from the very time that they're young, which means I follow advice that I got a million years ago about not saying we can't afford that by saying that's not a wise way to spend my money. That's an advice because otherwise they see you buying stuff and they're all, we can't afford the Hot Wheel, but we can afford your new hair. Like they start thinking about, oh, you can afford to go on Etsy. I see, but you can't afford. But if we say instead, you know what, that's just not a wise way to spend my money, or I haven't budgeted for that this week, and we're not going to be doing that right now. That makes a lot more sense, and it starts putting seeds in their brains about, hey, money is something you budget for. You don't just spend it. Another thing we would say is, hey, let's think about it, or why don't we save up for that? Let's see if you still want it in a week. Those are all things that can help raise a child who's responsible with money, right? Things like how I spend my time give a message. I want children who want to spend time with me when I'm old. That's something that I really think will be super cool. I have this fantasy of my kids driving into town and being like, hey mom, I'm in town for the day. You want to go to lunch? I know that's so Gilmore Girls, but I just feel like that would be rad. That's a reasonable goal. But first of all, I have to have said, hey, I've got some extra time. Would you like to go to lunch with me? hey, you know what would be really nice? I haven't talked to you in a long time. Let's make some one-on-one time just for the two of us. I have to do that if I would like that to happen when they're older. You can't just call up a 40-year-old woman and say, it's been a long time. How come you never take me to lunch? They're going to be like, yeah, I've already have a life here. What are you talking about? These are things that we have to be intentional about. And so this is something that I would encourage you to do, and not in a way that will get your hopes all up and you'll be so disappointed if that's not how it turns out. But start thinking, what kind of relationship would I like to have with my children? I would like my children to call me when they've had a really bad day at work. I think that would be cool. Like, you know what, I had a really bad day. All I want to do is call my mom. That would be me. I think that would be so cool if they want to do that. Then I need to be a person that they can come home from school and say, I had a bad day. And I need to model for them. Sometimes I need to be honest and say, you know what, I had a bad day at work. Can I talk to you about it for a minute? I feel so much better. Thank you. Obviously, I'm not going to put the weight of the world on their shoulders, but I'm modeling for them, hey, this is what people who love each other do. They share each other's burdens. They talk about, I had a really bad day. I want them to say to me, hey, Mom, you hurt my feelings when you said that. Not just not ever talk to me again. And so I need to model for them, hey, you know what, when you did that, you really hurt my feelings. And when they tell me that I hurt their feelings, I need to go, what? No, I need to be like, I'm so sorry, I did not realize that. When they come to me with news of things that they would like to do that I'm not crazy about, I can't flip out about it because they're going to think my mom flips out about everything, so why would I tell her anything? And they start keeping secrets. It needs to be your children need to be able to fail, to tell you when they messed up. I got a F on a paper. I remember my daughter coming home one day and she's just like, oh, Mom, I have to tell you something. I got a D on this math quiz, and don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. I already talked to the teacher, I already figured out how to do it, and I did it. And I thought, how funny that she has in her head that I would not accept a D on a math quiz. I need to fix that right away because this is something that I need to think out. Well, she needs to call me if she's like, you know what, I totally messed up on something and I need to talk to you about it. So I need to, first of all, have my reaction reflect my feelings on that. Oh my gosh, everybody gets low grades sometimes. I'm so proud of you for handling it and taking care of it. But really, if you really just want to vent for a minute about how hard it was and what you're going to do next time, let's just chat about that. And in the future, just so you know, it's all right if every now and again you don't do great on something in school. I expect you to try your best, but if you did your best, that's all right. So we want to be able to be that person who watches looks at the things that we say, that we look at the way that we spend our time, that we look at the way we spend our money, that we look at the way, even our body language. One of the things that I hear a lot about is the mommy guilt on get off your cell phone. Okay, so I'm first going to say, I agree, get off your cell phone, yada, yada. But really, like your children are not hoping that you're never going to look at your phone. You don't have to, go Amish and never look on Pinterest again. You don't need to never take a moment to stalk your high school boyfriend. Like these things are in moderation, are healthy things to do from time to time. The thing is we're looking for balance. What message are we giving our children? Is it okay to say to your children, you know what, I have to make a couple phone calls and I will play with you in just one moment? Or I do want to see that. I'm just finishing this up and I will be right with you. Of course it's okay to do that. You don't have to drop everything and wait on your child hand and foot. However, when they have a need, it's important that we give the message that you're paying attention. I know one thing that it's a weird thing, and I don't even know if my children would very much enjoy how much I share this with you, but like my bed is like the place where you come to talk. Like I'll be sitting in my bed reading or something. That's usually when they'll approach and they'll just, what you doing? And they'll never say, can we talk? They just kind of lurk. Okay, lurker, what do you need? Come in here and talk to me. And the most important thing that I can do is not close my book on my thumb or put my computer to the side, but close it all the way, close my laptop all the way, turn off my phone, put it out of my reach, close the book all the way, put it on the shelf, and look at them and say, talk to me. Tell me what's up. The little things like the body language of, you know what, nothing is more important than, I can see you have something on your mind, I want to talk to you. Or, you know what, I see you have something on your mind, I do want to talk to you. I have to finish this. Give me 5 minutes, and then in 5 minutes, really stop what you're doing and go and help them. Those sorts of things send a great message, and being that intentional about it. Hey, you know what? I'm closing up shop. I'm here for you sends a beautiful message. And it sets a phase for what's going to happen later. Because I'm telling you that someday your children, as hard as it is to believe that it's going to actually happen, are going to be 30. And you are going to want some time with them. I know. Some of us are like, the countdown is on. You're going to want to spend time with them, yes? I don't think any of us is like, I can't wait till they get to be 18 and then that's it. They move out. I don't want to have another word to do with them. Even the people I know who enjoyed parenting the least would never say that. We all want to have some sort of a healthy relationship with our kids. But when we call them up and we say, hey, do you have some time? We want them to go, hey, my mom always had time for me. She always made time. Maybe she didn't always have time. There's no reason to have this huge guilt that you're not always available for one reason or another, but she made time for me and she listened to me when I talked. And so that when you have that time to talk to your children, that it'll reciprocate. Will it 100%? Is this a formula for success? No. First of all, we haven't factored in the outside world. We never know who they're going to marry, what their life is going to be like. It may not turn out exactly perfect the way that we want, but your kids will at least understand that they're talking to a woman who has always cared about who they are, who they're going to be, and about having a relationship with them. And I say that to my kids all the time. When my son was being at his worst, I had a conversation with him and I said, I want to share something with you. This is how I picture you moving out. Hey, Mom, I found a place. I'm going to go live there. And I go, oh, that's awesome. How can I help you? And I picture Dad moving in all the heavy things. And I picture putting food in your cupboard. And you're going, oh, Mom, you don't need all this. And I just put all kinds of food, all the food that you like in the cupboard. And I picture going like, oh, my gosh, I noticed that you don't have comfy pillows. And I go and I get pillows at wherever. And I bring them in. And he's looking at me all, I go, what I don't picture is saying, and don't let the door hit you on the way out. Bam, get out, go. I don't want that to happen, but I am looking at the way that we are talking to each other right now, and I see that we are moving towards this one, and I don't like it. How would you like to leave this house? And he's all, I don't care about pillows. I'm all, that's fine. But how do you picture it? Do you want to move out in a happy scenario, or do you want to be kicked out? And he's like, I want to go out well. Well, then we need to change how we talk to each other. We need to change how this is going. And although there was a conversation with a 17, 18-year-old, there is a way that we need to be looking at these conversations with our small children. Do I want my child to talk to me the way that he talks to me now when he is 15? Will it be as cute as it is today? No, it will not, sometimes. Do I want them to think that the world has to be revolving around them when they're 15? Will it be as cute as it is today? If it won't, then we need to make some changes. And that's where intentionality comes into play. That's where we can take the time and we can be praying about a way for God to show us how can I make that happen? Give me a vision of what I would like this relationship to look like. And maybe it's not as specific as the pillows and the cans of food. Maybe it's not as weird as mine might be. But I do hope that you would take a moment to go, I would like to have a positive relationship with my children, and so I need to foster a positive relationship now. And that my children would not see me being their parent as a burden. And I think that's the last thing that I would leave you with my last couple of seconds to spare if I haven't gone over. The thing that I would leave you with is the impression that we give our children of how it is to be able to care for them. And I've spent a lot of times with teenagers lately, and you probably are like, why are we talking about teens so much? Well, that's my world right now. And so a few years ago, I had a group of teenagers invite me to take them out for winter formal dress shopping. And I was so honored to do it. I was like, I don't even have a teenage girl, and they're inviting me. And the truth was they couldn't get any of their moms to drive them. So they're like, she's a sucker. She can't say no, and she's got a big car. But regardless of the criterion, it was an honor to hang out with these girls and the conversations that they were having. And I just kept telling them, I love spending time with you. I can't believe you guys let me come. This is so much fun. I love, you guys are hilarious. And the comments that I kept getting back were, well, my mom doesn't think I'm so hilarious. Oh, my, well, if we're so hilarious, then why couldn't any of our moms take us? And I thought, well, and the thing that I presented to them, everybody just doesn't have the free time, and that's not fair. But in my heart, I was thinking the impression that these girls have gotten is that they're in the way, that they want too much, they need too much, they're too much of a burden. And so, although I may not always be able to drop everything and drive a band of children, I'm not taking your kids shopping, sorry. Maybe I may not always be able to do that, but I can give the impression of that it was important to me. I wish that I could do it. I wish that I could. What else can I do instead? And I can give my children the impression that it is an honor to be their mom. And I try to tell that to my children as often as I can. If I can't remember the last time I said, I love being your mom, I'd say it that very day. Sometimes I'll text it, and I know my kids are looking at the text message like, but it is something that it's important that kids need to know. I love being your mom. It is an honor being able to take care of you. I'm so happy that I got to do that. When they say, thank you for the cookies that you made or whatever, you can say, I'm so glad I got to make those for you because I know that it made you so happy. And as we're saying those things, we're giving an intentional message that they're valued and they are loved. And that spills over very nicely into the intentionality with which God parents us, that He loves us, He made us on purpose and for a purpose, that He cares about us, that He has time for us. Because what we don't realize that we do as Christian parents, our children know that we are Christians. Sometimes we're aware other people know we're Christians, and so we have to act a certain way because we don't want to cause anybody to stumble, but we forget our children are watching us that same way, and we don't want to give them anything to stumble about either, right? And so we want to be careful that we are giving a message that we are giving a message that God is there for you. God is honored to be your father. God loves you the way that you are. God wants to spend time with you. God is not too busy for you. He wants to embrace you. He wants to hear your about your day. He wants to hear if you need help. All of those things that I want to give to my children are messages that I also want to, about me, I want to give to my children about who God is. And the best way to do that is to live that out. Always, no, I blow it every single day, and you will too. That's okay. But at least we're going to try, right? At least we're going to try. Okay, so what you have in front of you somewhere is a list of discussion questions. And when I was thinking about these questions, I thought it might be a good way to start to kind of just talk about the messages that we got from our parents and the traditions that we did as a family when we were children, and talk about the things that we've spilled over and we've done. One of the things that my mom always used to do is if you woke up on a holiday, you had a spread. It's the strangest, funniest thing. Like on Valentine's Day, you always would have something to wear to school, like a shirt or something, a headband, or if you're a boy, boxers with hearts on them or whatever. Very exciting. And you would always have pink milk to drink, and probably pink scrambled eggs or something equally disgusting. On St. Patrick's Day, we knew the same thing was happening with green. On our birthday, things like that. You knew you would wake up and there would be something. And to me, that would say my mom was thinking of me. My mom thought about me the night, obviously before, because she had to get everything ready, and she thought about me the night before, and I got to wake up, and it sent a huge message to me. And I will say, in every conversation I've ever had with my mom or about my mom, we could talk about shortcomings or ways that she did well or failed, but one thing I could never say is that I didn't know that my mom loved me. I always knew it. It was from little things like that. So that's why I wanted you to spend a little time during your discussion to kind of think of those things. What are the traditions? What are the things that we did that our parents were intentional about, that we want to make sure that we are being intentional about with our children? And then, if we have time, then you can talk maybe about some things we wish our moms might have cared about a little bit more, and that we are taking steps to make sure that our children understand that message. Alrighty? Thank you guys so much for having me. I am Forgetful Jones today, and I completely left a bag by my door that I was going to bring with that could give you guys information about how to contact me if you ever have any questions. So you can find me very easily on Facebook, Amberlappin easily, or amberlappin.com is my website. You can find me pretty easily. If you ever have any questions, or you're just like, hey, you know what, I'm tearing my hair out about this thing or that thing, do you have any experience with it? Chances are I do, because I get to talk to a lot of moms all the time. And so please feel free to contact me anytime. I'd love to chat with you. And we have a mailing list that's coming up too, so you might be able to sign up for that on either the website or on Facebook. So thank you.